Attracted by beauty and fortune of Rukmani, the daughter of King Bhishmaka, many great princes and kings assembled to marry her. But Lord Krishna, stepping over the other hopeful candidates, carried her away as his own share as Garuna carried away her.
So this is kidnapping of Rukmini. So we know the. But Prabhupada writes a nice statement right in the beginning, glorifying Rukmini. Princess Rukmini, the daughter of King Bhishmaka, was actually as attractive as fortune itself because she was as valuable as gold, both in color and in value. So since the goddess of fortune Lakshmi is the property of the Supreme Lord, Rukmini was actually meant for Lord Krishna, but Shishupal was selected as a bridegroom by Rukmini's elder brother. Although King Bhishmaka wanted his daughter to be married to Krishna. Okay, and then we know the pastime. Okay, next.
By subduing even bulls,
Seven
bulls, whose noses were not pierced, the Lord achieved the hand of Princess Ragnajiti in the open competition to select her bridegroom. Although the Lord was victorious, his competitors asked the hand of the princess, and thus there was a fight. Well equipped with weapons, the Lord killed or wounded all of them, but he himself was not hurt.
Okay, next.
Just to please his dear wife, the Lord brought back the Parijata tree from heaven, just as an ordinary husband would do. But Indra, the king of heaven, induced his wife's handpicked by his wife's handpicked as he was, ran after the Lord full force to fight him.
So here Srila Prabhupada writes, just to please his wife, like an ordinary husband, the Lord brought back the tree and this enraged Vajri, or the control of the thunderbolt. Indra's wives inspired him to run after the Lord to fight. And Indra, because he was a henpecked husband and also a fool, listened to them and dared to fight with Krishna. He was a fool on this occasion because he forgot that everything belongs to the Lord. And in the next paragraph he writes that because Indra was henpecked, dominated by his beautiful wives like Shachi, he became a fool, just as all persons who are dominated by their wives are generally foolish. So Indra thought that Krishna was a henpecked husband. Who was henpecked? Indra. But what he thought? He thought Krishna was henpecked. This is called Atmavan Manyate Jagat. So, whatever one thinks about others, actually it is himself. But rather he projects his own consciousness on others. So he himself is henpecked, but he is thinking Krishna is henpecked. So therefore it is also said, the world is a mirror of one's own consciousness. So what is one's own consciousness, one projects on others. So if I am envious of somebody else, then I begin to think, no, he is envious of me. He forgot that the Lord is the proprietor of everything and cannot be henpecked. The Lord is fully independent, and by His will only, He can have hundreds and thousands of wives like Satyabhama. He was not therefore attached to Satyabhama because she was a beautiful wife, but he was pleased with her devotional service and thus wanted to reciprocate the unalloyed devotion of his devotee. Important points. So it was not that he was henpecked or he had some special attachment to Satyabhama. No, he was simply reciprocating with her devotional service. That's all. But Indra was henpecked and a fool. He didn't realize that everything is Krishna's property. And not only that, now this is actually a very good example of ungrateful. Just before that, what pastime took place? Yes, so Krishna came along with Satyabhama on Garuda. Both of them came and then fought with Bhaumasur, killed Bhaumasur, and then brought back Aditi's earrings. Something else also? whatever, and gave back to Aditi. So, so Indra was actually tormented by Bhaumasur, and as a favor to Indra, Krishna killed him. And immediately, just see the power of the material energy. And immediately after that, after receiving such a great favor from Krishna, Indra immediately forgot. Yes, Govardhan Leela is also there. But, huh? Achha, that was only a few days ago. Okay. Whatever it is. So here, this is immediate. This is just immediate. He received such a big favor from Krishna, he immediately forgot. And now just for the Parijat tree, he was ready to attack Krishna. Just see the foolishness. But that's how Maya acts, to put us in so much of forgetfulness. So therefore, one has to be careful about. So the Ishavasyam principle, that's what Indra forgot. So even though he's king of heaven, he forgot Ishopanishad. Ishavasyam idam sarvam yat kincha jagatyam jagat. The entire jagat belongs to Krishna. So, but Indra was thinking, no, the Parijat tree is mine. Yes. Okay, next.
Narakasur, the son of Dharitri, the earth, tried to grasp the whole sky, and for this he was killed by the Lord in a fight. His mother then prayed to the Lord. This led to the return of the kingdom to the son of Narakasur, and thus the Lord entered the house of the demon.
Okay, so this is the pastime of Narakasur, the son of Dharitri, the earth. So this Narakasur, he was whose son? Krishna's son. Krishna's son. But he became a demon due to the bad association of Bana, another demon. Okay, so by association of Banasur, the son of Krishna became an Asur. An atheist is called a demon, and it is a fact that even a person born of good parents can turn into a demon by bad association. And Prabhupada, that's a beautiful statement. Birth is not always the criterion of goodness. Unless and until one is trained in the culture of good association, one cannot become good. Unless one is trained in the culture of good association. So the training is required. What does it mean to have good culture, good habits, good behavior? What does it mean? So the training is required. So it's not just about birth. Because even if by birth one has mode of goodness qualities, by the association one can be influenced by Rajas and Tamas. So therefore it's not simply by birth. So therefore, by birth or due to some other reasons, if one has mode of goodness qualities, those are not permanent. But when one practices devotional service and then the natural good qualities of the soul become awakened due to purification, then those are steady. Then those are steady. But otherwise, simply by birth or some association, one develops some good qualities, those are not permanent. So therefore, one has to be trained, purified. When the purification takes place, then actually one develops the good qualities. Okay, continue. Next.
There in the house of the demon, all the princes kidnapped by Narakasura at once became alert upon seeing the Lord, the friend of the distressed. They looked upon him with eagerness, joy and shyness, and offered to be his wives.
Okay, so we know how many prince? Yes, 16,000. 16,000. Okay, next.
All those princesses were lodged in different apartments, and the Lord simultaneously assumed different bodily expressions, exactly matching each and every princess. He accepted their hands in perfect rituals by his internal potency.
Okay. 9.
Just to explain himself according to his transcendental feature, the Lord begot in each and every one of them 10 offsprings with exactly his own qualities.
Okay. Next.
Kalyavan, the king of Magad, and Salve attacked the city of Mathura. But when the city was encircled by their soldiers, the Lord refrained from killing them personally, just to show the power his own men.
Just to show the power of his own men. So, whose power Krishna wanted to show? Which devotee? Yes, Muchukunda. And Bhima. Yes. So Kalyavan was killed by Muchukunda and Jarasandha was killed by Bhima. So even though he could have killed them himself, but he wanted to give credit to his devotees. That's what Prabhupada writes. So Kalyavan and the king of Magad were killed by Muchukunda and Bhima respectively, who acted as agents of the Lord. By such acts, the Lord wanted to exhibit the prowess of his devotees as if he were personally unable to fight, but his devotees could kill them. The relationship of the Lord with his devotees is a very happy one. So, he wants to divide the share of glory. He sometimes engaged his devotees to take the credit. Again, an important point, something to learn. Usually, what happens? Usually, one tends to take all credit oneself. Not only that, one even tries to usurp others' credit also. जो खुद ने नहीं किया उसके लिए भी क्रेडिट लेना चाहता है. Of course, what one has does, definitely one wants to take credit, but one even tries to take credit of what somebody else has done. But here, what do we see in the character of the Lord? What he could do, he does not do just to share credit with his devotees. So again, a very important lesson, that how we should not be eager to take credit, steal credit, but rather we should be eager to give credit to others. Let others also get the credit. Let others be glorified. So this should be the consciousness of the devotee. The Lord is showing through his character, through his behavior, through his examples, he's showing us how we should behave. So eager to give credit to others. As we were just discussing about Srila Prabhupada, ready to give credit even to his disciples. Though he did everything from the beginning, and he was the power behind everything, but still he was ready to give credit even to his disciples. So that's the behavior of the Lord in the Vaishnavas. And therefore Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, and of course he gives another example of Arjuna also on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, and then finally he concludes by saying, what he wants to do himself by his transcendental plans, he executes through his confidential devotees. That is the way of the Lord's mercy towards his pure, unalloyed devotees. Okay, next. Okay.
Text there.
One second. One second.
Text 9 where it is written, it is on qualities. Qualities refers, there are
What?
in the text 9 it is written that every one of them 10 offsprings with exactly his own qualities. Qualities refers that all are Vishnu or they are like having the opulence like Krishna. Like the way we see the Jivgosan commentary last time, that day. Pradyumna and everybody is like Kamdev came in the
So as far as Krishna's children, so definitely they cannot be ordinary. They are all part of the Yadu dynasty. They're all Yadavas. So at least most of them are definitely all eternal associates of the Lord. And some could be combination of the eternal associate with the Devatas. Maybe some were only Devatas also. So I suppose all categories were there. I don't know exactly, but That's my understanding. But in any case, even if you take it philosophically, then Achintya Beda Beda Tattva. So the Jiva definitely has the qualities of the Supreme Lord.
Yeah, that one point is there. I was thinking the terms of opulence.
Which opulence?
Like this world can be told that everybody is Sarashti, the same opulence that because they are in God.
Of course, they are in the spiritual world with Krishna. So definitely they have all the opulence. They're in Dwarka, then they have all the opulence of Dwarka. So that's definitely correct. So definitely they have all the opulences, being residents of Dwarka, whether it is the opulence, the material opulences or beauty, they have everything. They're not ordinary being sons of Dwarka. They definitely have all of that. Okay, आगे 11.
O king, like Sambara, Dvida,
Bana.
Bana, Mur, Balwala, and many other demons such as Dantapukra. Some he killed himself, and some he caused to be killed by others.
Das, Baldev. Okay. पीछे तो पीछे.
Then, O Vidura, the Lord caused all the kings, both the enemies and those on the side of your fighting nephews, to be killed in the battle of Kurukshetra. All those kings were so great and strong that the earth seemed to shake as they traversed the war field.
Duryodhana was bereft of his fortune, and duration of life became because of the intricacy of ill advice given by Karna, Dushasana, and Sovala. When he lay on the ground with his followers, his thighs broken.
John.
Although he was powerful, the Lord was not happy to see the sea.
So Duryodhan was lying down with his thighs broken. So even though Krishna was on the opposite side, but it's not that Krishna was thinking, very good, aisa hi hona tha. He was not thinking. Why? Prabhupada is explaining. The Lord is constrained to award punishment upon the wrongdoer, but he is not happy to award such punishments because the living entities are originally his parts and parcels. He is harder than the thunderbolt for the wrongdoer and softer than the rose for the faithful. The wrongdoer is misled by bad associates and by ill advice, which is against the established principles of the Lord's order, and thus he becomes subject to punishment. The surest path to happiness is to live by the principles laid down by the Lord and not disobey his established laws which are enacted in the Vedas and Puranas for the forgetful living entities. Okay, so when the Lord sees that the living entities are mischievous, they're not following his laws, then of course they are punished. But it's not that the Lord likes to punish, because after all, his children. But he is forced to punish just to bring them on the right track. But it's not that the Lord, he rejoices the punishment, but he feels pity for the demons, but at the same time they're punished. Yes.
After the end of the battle of Kurukshetra, the Lord said, "The abatement of the earth's great burden, 18 Akshonis, has now been effected with the help of Drona, Bhishma, Arjuna and
Bhima.
But what is this? There is still the great strength of the Yadu dynasty, born of myself, which may be a more unbearable burden."
So now Krishna is, after all the demons were killed, Krishna is thinking, okay, the burden of the earth has been reduced, but still there is a big burden. So here, what is this burden is being explained. So Srila Prabhupada is explaining, first of all, the earth is never overburdened. The heaviest mountains and oceans on the face of the earth hold more living entities than there are human beings, and they are not overburdened. Okay, so all these things are there on earth. At the end of the first paragraph, there's an adequate arrangement for food for all living beings all over the earth by the order of the Supreme Lord, and he can arrange more and more if there is actually a disproportionate increase of living beings. Okay, so Prabhupada is explaining the whole thing about how there is no overpopulation. Many lectures Prabhupada explains there is no overpopulation because when a living entity is born in this world, Krishna arranges for the food also. So everything is provided. And Krishna has no big difficulty in providing. So the next paragraph he writes, the earth became overburdened due to dharma glani, or irregular discharge of the Lord's desire. The Lord appeared on the earth to curb the increase in miscreants and not the increase in population, as is wrongly put forward by the mundane economist. Okay, so the real burden is dharma glani. Okay, somebody read the next paragraph, that's nice.
Therefore,
Mm.
Therefore, although there may be great increase in population on the surface of the earth, if the people are exactly in line with God consciousness and are not miscreants, such a burden on the earth is a source of pleasure for her. There are two kinds of burdens. There is the burden of the beast and the burden of love. The burden of the beast is unbearable, but the burden of love is a source of pleasure. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti describes the burden of love very practically. He says that the burden of the husband on the young wife, the burden of the child on the lap of the mother, and the burden of the wealth on the businessman, although actually burdens from the viewpoint of heaviness, are sources of pleasure. And in the absence of such burdensome objects, one may feel the burden of separation, which is heavier to bear than the actual burden of love. When Lord Krishna referred to the burden of the Yadu dynasty on the earth, he referred to something different than the burden of the beast. The large numbers of family members born of Lord Krishna counted to some millions and were certainly a great increase in the population of the earth. But because all of them were expansions of the Lord Himself by His transcendental plenary expansions, they were a source of great pleasure for the earth. When the Lord referred to them in connection with the burden on the earth, He had in mind their imminent disappearance from the earth. All the members of the family of Lord Krishna were incarnations of different demigods, and they were to disappear from the surface of the earth along with the Lord. When he referred to the unbearable heaviness on the earth in connection with the Yadu dynasty, he was referring to the burden of their separation. Srila Jiva Goswami confirms this inference.
Okay, so the burden that Krishna is referring to is the burden of separation. And so here Prabhupada is writing that all the members of the family were incarnations of different demigods. But then we do understand from the previous commentaries that in most cases there were combinations of the demigods with the eternal associates. So that's how the pastimes are performed. Otherwise, if they were only demigods, then they may not know how to perform the pastimes. So therefore, it's usually a combination. But in any case, the burden here is referred to the burden of separation. And then Prabhupada nicely explained the burden of beast and the burden of love. So for a disciple to participate and take on the mission of the spiritual master is what? Yes, it's a burden of love. So therefore, when Srila Prabhupada was asked about all the difficulties and inconveniences he faced to start ISKCON and spread ISKCON, so Srila Prabhupada, he said, no, that was no trouble. It was simply service to my spiritual master. So everything depends on perception. Either one could see it as a great burden, a burden of the beast, a great difficulty, great trouble, inconvenience. One could see it in that way. Or the same difficulties, one could see it as service to the spiritual master, burden of love. So it depends on the perception. Either one sees it as a burden of the beast, very difficult, or one sees it as burden of love. So, what will be the difference when there's a difference in perception? Hmm. Accordingly, one will react. So, then what will be the reaction? Hmm? So, if one sees the difficulties in service as a burden of the beast, what will happen?
Service will become difficult.
So then it's be tiresome, it'll be frustration, depression. So that will be the result. But if one sees a burden of love, service to the spiritual master, yes, one will enthusiastically carry on the service, even though there may be so many difficulties and problems. That's how Srila Prabhupada went through the whole thing. He simply saw it as a service to his spiritual master. So therefore, burden of love.
Why the situation of 18 Akshaunis, how they had been eradicated? They did a lot of, like here the count is given 18 Akshaunis in this shloka. And then there is a 9 above, but there is a great number of, in that sense it's a count, right, in this shloka? Or how? The counts of the Yadus.
No.
Then why the number and that is given in this shloka?
Okay, so the 18 Akshonis was definitely a big number. Correct.
And then there is still the great strength of the dynasty born, which will be a more unbearable burden.
So that's what, so Krishna is thinking that yes, big number has been eradicated in the form of the Kauravas and all these people. But he's thinking that the number of the Yadus is also big. Yes, that's also a big number. That's also very, so somewhere he has written millions of them. Millions of them. But then what he's referring to is the burden of separation. Okay, next.
When they quarrel among themselves, influenced by intoxication, with their eyes red like copper because of drinking madhu, then only will they disappear, otherwise it will not be possible. On my disappearance, this incident will take place.
So this incident of the disappearance of the Yadus is discussed at many places. Okay, so it's discussed here, then again it comes in the 10th canto, 11th canto. Of course, 11th canto is the most elaborate. But then you find that the incident is referred to at many places. So here, Srila Prabhupada writes, the Lord and his associates appear and disappear by the will of the Lord. They are not subjected to the laws of material nature. Okay, so just like Lord comes by his own will, similarly his associates also come like that. So therefore, the so-called fighting would also take place by the will of the Lord, otherwise there would be no cause for their fighting. So this point must be clear, and this point is repeated again and again, that this fighting of the Yadus amongst themselves is entirely orchestrated by the Supreme Lord. The devotees and associates of the Lord are completely surrendered souls. Thus, they are transcendental instruments in the hands of the Lord and can be used in any way the Lord desires. The pure devotees also enjoy such pastimes of the Lord because they want to see Him happy. So they are ready to become instruments in the hands of the Lord, even though it may be painful to them, but they are happy because the Lord is happy. The devotees of the Lord never assert independent individuality. On the contrary, they utilize their individuality in pursuit of the desires of the Lord, and this cooperation of the devotees with the Lord makes a perfect scene of the Lord's pastimes. So therefore, only those who are able to cooperate with the Lord become a part of the Lord's pastimes. Otherwise, if they don't cooperate with the Lord, then Lord will have great difficulty performing his pastimes. Lord wants the devotee to act in one way. The devotee says, no, I won't act in this way. Big problem the Lord will have. So therefore, only those who agree to cooperate, then they become a part of the Lord's pastimes.
Difficult will be if Lord chooses us in this way by apparently making look to others that we are not in cooperation with the Lord. In the sense, externally they were into intoxication and all these things. So how to have that perception?
What?
That Lord is choosing us, we are so fortunate that Krishna is making us an instrument of His pastimes.
So that is why we are here, no? Why we are here then? To cooperate with the Lord, that's why we are here. That is ultimately the mission for all the living entities. Correct? Willful cooperators. But then when one does not cooperate, then Krishna deals with another way. So because we agree to cooperate, at least to some extent, that's why we are here. But then when we become more and more purified and agree to just become puppets in the hands of the Lord, then material existence ends. Till then, the purification has to take place so that we come to the point of becoming fully in cooperation. Okay? Okay, continue.
Lord Sri Krishna, thus thinking to himself, established Maharaj Yudhishthir in the position of supreme control of the world in order to show the ideal of administration on the path of piety.
Next.
The embryo of Puru's dynasty, the descendant begotten by the great hero Abhimanyu in the womb of Uttara, his wife, was burnt by the weapon of the son of Drona, but later he was again protected by the Lord.
I don't know whether this point came in the first canto, but here Srila Prabhupada specifically writes a second body was given by the Lord within the womb.
It was not there.
It was not there, right? Yes. But here Prabhupada mentions that it's not just protecting Parikshit within the womb, but he says that actually that body was burnt by the Brahmastra. And he was given second. Again, towards the end of the purport, again Prabhupada writes, when Ashwatthama destroyed the embryo of Maharaj Parikshit, the Lord by his own internal potency entered into the womb of Uttara by his plenary portion, just to give audience to the would-be Maharaj Parikshit who was in great danger. By his appearance in the womb, the Lord encouraged the child and gave him complete protection in a new body by his omnipotency. Okay, so that's a special point Prabhupada is writing here, that he was given a second body, new body. So the first body was burnt. Okay? Next.
The Supreme Lord induced the son of Dharma to perform 3 horse sacrifices, and Maharaj Yudhishthir, constantly following Krishna, the personality of Godhead, protected and enjoyed the earth, assisted by his younger brothers.
One important sentence here. Perfect monarchy necessitates representation of the supreme will of the Lord. And Maharaj Yudhishthir was the ideal monarch on the supreme principle. Yes, Naradev, the king is called as Naradev, because representative of the Supreme Lord. Go ahead.
Simultaneously, the personality of Godhead enjoyed life in the city of Dwarka, strictly in conformity with the Vedic customs of society. He was situated in detachment and knowledge, as initiated by the Sankhya system of philosophy.
Yes, so the Lord, when he was there in Dwarka, he perfectly followed all the principles of dharma. So, as Prabhupada writes, the Lord was acting freely as he willed, yet by his practical example, he taught not to lead a life which goes against the principles of detachment and knowledge. So, we all have read in the Krishna book how Krishna, when he lived in Dwarka, he behaved like an ideal householder. 20.
Goddess of fortune, with his usual gentle and swiftly smiling face, his nectarine words and his flawless character.
Okay. Here are some important points in this purport. Lord Krishna is detached from the variegatedness of the inferior nature, but he is in eternal blissful enjoyment of the spiritual nature or his internal potency. Okay, so he is detached from the inferior nature, but he is, or the external energy, but he is performing pastimes with his internal potency. Ananda Chinmaya Rasa Pratibhavitabi. The Lord is eternally joyful and cognizant in the taste derived from such transcendental bliss. Negation of the variegatedness of the inferior energy does not necessitate negation of the positive transcendental bliss of the spiritual world. So that's the problem with the Mayavadis. The Mayavadis only tend to negate the enjoyment of the material world, but they don't find any tangible enjoyment on the spiritual platform, and so therefore they cannot continue their spiritual practices. We discussed this before. So such manifestations of the internal potency are the reality of which the material shadow is only a temporary representation from which everyone with proper knowledge must be detached. So the material world is simply a reflection. Okay, 21.
The Lord enjoyed his pastimes both in this world and in other worlds, higher planets, specifically in the association of the Edo dynasty. At leisure hours offered by night, he enjoyed the friendship of conjugal love with women.
Okay, all that is internal potency, nothing to do with material energy. Okay.
The Lord was thus engaged in household life for many, many years. But at last, his detachment from ephemeral sex life was fully manifested.
Okay, so even though all this, so his marriages and all that was simply internal potency, but even that, ultimately the Lord gave up that also. As Prabhupada writes, the Lord's detachment from household life does not indicate detachment from his eternal associates, the transcendental covered damsels, but the Lord desired to end his so-called attachment to the three modes of material nature. He can never be detached from the service of his transcendental associates like Rukmini, another goddess of fortune. Okay, so his detachment was towards the external energy, which he ultimately gave up. But his attachment to the internal potency is always there. 23.
Every living entity is controlled by a supernatural force, and thus his sense enjoyment is also under the control of that supernatural force. No one therefore can put his faith in Lord Krishna's transcendental sense activities, but one who has become a devotee of the Lord by rendering devotional service.
So here he's mentioning that how everyone is under the control of the living entities under the control of the external energy, but then as far as Krishna is concerned, he's totally under the control of the internal potency that only a devotee can understand. So that's what Prabhupada writes. The same fact is herein corroborated. No one but one who is enlightened in the devotional service of the Lord can understand the difference between the Lord's activities and those of others who are controlled by the supernatural force. So everyone else is controlled by the external potency. The Lord is controlled by internal potency. Even though apparently it appears both are performing activities in this world, but one is performing under external potency, one is performing under internal potency. No one is independent in obtaining sense enjoyment, and everyone, this material world, is after sense enjoyment. One who has limited senses cannot believe that the Lord can eat by his transcendental power of hearing and can perform the act of sex life simply by seeing. 24. So now, this is the last section of the chapter, which is describing the annihilation of the Yadu dynasty. So the pastime leading to the annihilation, that is what is being described. And of course, the pastime is described in detail in the first chapter of the 11th canto. Okay.
Once upon a time, great sages were made angry by the sporting activities of the princely descendants of Yadu and Bhoj dynasties. And thus, as described by the Lord, the sages cursed them.
Okay, so again, Prabhupada keeps reminding this point. The cursing of the princes by the sages was another transcendental pastime of the Lord to make a show of anger. The princes were cursed in order that one may know, so this is the lesson for us to learn, that even the descendants of the Lord who could never be vanquished by any act of material nature were subjected to the reactions of anger by great devotees of the Lord. One should therefore take great care and attention not to commit an offense at the feet of a devotee of the Lord. That's the lesson for us to learn. But the reality is that the entire pastime was orchestrated by the Lord. Yes, so it's happened by the will of the Lord. But if we simply think, oh, it was the will of the Lord, ठीक है, हो गया, भगवान के प्लान के अनुसार हो गया. So if we just think that way, then we won't learn anything. Therefore, the acharyas bring the points for us to learn. So the point for us to learn is that however exalted one may be, even members of Krishna's family, but if one offends the saintly persons, then one will be annihilated. That's the lesson.
When one should come to the point that it's by the will of the Lord it's being done.
Therefore, to get the proper understanding, one should learn from the acharyas.
Generally, we keep on trying some service, something happens and failure, success. And sometimes devotee conclude that it's by the will of the Lord it's being done.
So therefore, that conclusion has to be in line with Guru Sadhu Shastra. We cannot directly come to that conclusion. Otherwise, very simple. Just don't do any service, and by will of the Lord, nothing is happening. Very simple. But then that's wrong justification, misuse of philosophy. So therefore, one has to. That's why one requires spiritual master. That's why one requires sadhus. That's the whole purpose, so that I don't get into my own mental concoctions. So therefore, from the acharyas we learn. So therefore, we find Prabhupada keeps repeating that point, that don't think that the yadus were ordinary people, they killed themselves like ordinary drunken men. No. That entire pastime took place by the will of the Lord. But then there are lessons for us to learn. Yes, the scope of misuse of Shastra is there at every moment. That is correct. Yes, by the will, everything is happening by the will of the Lord. But why the Lord wills? That is the question. That we already discussed, na? Yes. So that is correct. But then why the Lord allows?
Because the jiva desires.
Yes, we have so much we discussed on these points. So it all begins with jiva's desire. So because the jiva desired, and the jiva is stubborn not to change his desires, therefore the Lord sanctions. But then the jiva has to face the reactions, the consequences. So yes, that is correct. Without the will of the Lord, nothing can happen. But then why the Lord wills? Why the Lord allows something to happen? That is the question. So in some cases, the Lord wills and the jivas act according to the Lord's will. And in other cases, the jiva desires and the Lord fulfills the desires of the jiva. That's the difference. Okay. आगे पढ़ो.
A few months passed, and then, bewildered by Krishna, all the descendants of Krishna, Bhoja and Andhaka, who were incarnations of demigods, went to Prabhas, while those who were eternal devotees of the Lord did not live but remained in Dwara.
Yes, so here you see that this point is made very clear that these Yadus had both portions. There was the demigod portion and there was the eternal associate portion. So the eternal associates remained in Dwaraka, and it was only the demigods who went to Prabhas. So here it's being mentioned very clearly.
Then can you mention up there that how these eternal devotees they went back?
So when Krishna disappeared, they also disappeared. So when Krishna disappeared, in the 11th canto it's mentioned that basically the entire ocean covered Dwarka. The entire Dwarka was submerged. So at that time all the eternal associates went back to their abodes. Okay, 26.
After arriving there, all of them took bath, and with the water of this place of pilgrimage, they offered their respect to the forefathers, demigods and great sages, and thus satisfied them. They gave cows to the Brahmanas in royal charity.
Interesting point here. Prabhupada writes, the pure devotees are free from all these mixtures. Mixtures means karma, jnana, yoga, all these mixtures with pure devotional service, and are completely absorbed in the service of the Lord regardless of how and where they are situated. Pure devotees of the Lord are not enthusiastic to put aside their service to the Lord in order to go visit holy places of pilgrimage. Note the points. A great devotee of the Lord in modern times, Sri Narottam Das Thakur, has sung like this: to visit holy place of pilgrimage is another bewilderment of the mind, because devotional service to the Lord at any place is the last word in spiritual perfection. For pure devotees of the Lord who are completely satisfied with the transcendental loving service of the Lord, there is hardly any necessity to visit the various places of pilgrimage. But those who are not so advanced have the prescribed duties of visiting pilgrimage sites and regularly performing the rituals. Then somebody may question, but Rupa Goswami has said one of the most important angas of bhakti is Mathuravas, to visit the holy places. But here Narottam Das Thakur says it's a bewilderment of the mind. Yes, it comes at another place also. It comes, yes. Yes. So what's our situation? What do you consider? Advanced or not, Sharad? Advanced or not so advanced? So what's the injunction for the not so advanced? Right. So how do you reconcile both? So what is the necessity? For those who are not so advanced, what is the necessity? Okay, that's definitely true. Prabhupada has written that in some other purport very clearly. I think it comes somewhere in third canto only. Yes, Prabhupada writes very clearly, it has to be under guidance and along with some advanced devotees like the spiritual master, so that one does not commit offenses in the Dham. Prabhupada writes those points very. Okay, so then why the not so advanced should visit the holy places?
In order to become advanced place.
Yes. So how they'll become advanced?
By going there, by hearing from the advanced devotees there.
Yes, the main business is hearing, not sightseeing or shopping. So, yes. 27.
The Brahmanas were not only given bread, fat, cows in charity, but also gold coins, beddings, clothing, animals, seats, blankets, horses, elephants, girls, and sufficient kind of maintenance.
Yes, everything. Whatever they require. So Prabhupada writes that in the purport, the Kshatriya kings and rich mercantile men would provide them with all that they needed. So if they required girls to get married, they would provide. So that was their duty. And in exchange, the Brahmanas were completely devoted to the elevation of society. That was the way of social cooperation between the different castes. And the last verse?
Thereafter, they offered the Brahmanas highly delicious foodstuffs, first offered to the personality of Godhead, and offered their respectful obeisances by touching their heads to the ground. They lived perfectly by protecting the cows and the Brahmanas.
Okay, so Prabhupada writes, the behavior exhibited by the descendants of Yadu in the pilgrimage site of Prabhas was highly cultured and exactly to the point of human perfection. The perfection of human life is attained by following three principles of civilization. What are they? Protecting cows, maintaining Brahmanical culture, and above all, becoming a pure devotee of the Lord. Without becoming a devotee of the Lord, one cannot perfect one's human life. The perfection of human life is to be elevated to the spiritual world where there is no birth, no death, no disease, no old age. That is the highest perfection ever. Without this aim, any amount of material advancement and so-called comforts can only bring the defeat of the human form of life. And then he's saying, Brahmanas and Vaishnavas do not accept any foodstuff which is not first offered to the personality of Godhead. Foodstuff offered to the Lord is accepted with the devotees as mercy of the Lord. Okay. So they followed all these various aspects. And so therefore Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, so judging from all sides, the Yadus were perfectly trained, civilized persons. And their being cursed by the Brahmana sages was only by the desire of the Lord. So Prabhupada keeps repeating this point, so that one has a very clear perception towards the Yadus, that it was all orchestrated by the Lord. The whole instant, but at the same time, immediately Prabhupada gives the warning also. The whole instant was a warning to all concerned that no one should behave lightly with Brahmanas and Vaishnavas. So immediately Prabhupada puts both the points together. So on one hand, plan of the Lord, but at the same time, warning for us. Thus in the Bhagavad purports of the 3rd canto, 3rd chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled The Lord's Pastimes Out of Vrindavan. Okay, we'll take a 5 minutes break and then continue with the next chapter. Hare Krishna.